Hey everyone, today's book is called The Curious Garden. There once was a city without any gardens, or trees, or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors, as you can imagine. It was a very sad and dreary place. However, there was one little boy who loved being outside, even on drizzly days when everyone else stayed inside. You could always find Liam happily splashing through the neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading to the tracks. The railway had stopped working years ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, stepped out to the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Do you see it? Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he expected to find up there, but when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found his way of gardening. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway around it, the garden was growing, and it wanted to explore the tough little weeds and mosses that were first to move. They popped up further and down the tracks and were closely followed by more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. Look at all those flowers. Look, the flowers keep growing and growing. After spending the spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell in the city that season, and for the first time since he became a gardener, Liam could not visit his plants. Rather than waste his time worrying about his garden, Liam spent time preparing for the spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. Winter had taken a big toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon woke from their winter sleep. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up further and further from the railway and were closely followed by more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. But most important, surprising thing was they popped up were new gardeners. Everyone wanted to do a garden. Now look at all these beautiful gardens. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But all of the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. And now this city is very much more cheerful. And that's the Curious Garden.